you ready, kids?
Hello, it's Employee a Million, and here it is, the big 5-0, the 50th SpongeCom. Today's episode is Season 3, Episode 10, Wet Painters and Krusty Krab training video, both of which originally premiered on Nickelodeon 20 years ago today, on May 10th, 2002. And this is a very exciting one, because not only is this something of a milestone, kind of hard to believe now that there's nearly 300 SpongeBob episodes, but these are some of the very best of Season 3. I love these episodes, never get tired of them, and there's a lot to love about them, especially in this first one, coming right up. Wet Painters was written by C.H. Greenblatt, Kaz, and Mark O'Hare, and I rated it number 3 on my old top 5 Season 3 episodes list. It could be in a different position now because it's just an amazing episode all around. One of the very funniest SpongeBob episodes of its time, and also an exceptionally detailed episode for its time. Like, I'm going to talk about this later, but the backgrounds in this episode and the animation, they are top-notch for Season 3. That's some of the best that you can get from this season. One thing I find kind of interesting is that one of the deleted lines from this opening of the episode is that SpongeBob originally dedicated that crash to Squidward, which wouldn't make much sense because, as far as we know, Squidward isn't dead yet. But all throughout this episode, you get a really Kaz vibe from it. Like, you can tell that he had a lot of influence on the direction of the story and the facial expressions, because, honestly, some of this stuff would not be out of place in Season 11 or 12, where he is just completely going to town doing complete cartoon mayhem, and I find it very interesting to see that, because although we think a lot of Season 10, 11, 12 was influenced by Ren and Stimpy, it's really a much more exaggerated SpongeBob at the core of it, and this is what it is. Sort of a prelude to what you'll get, like, 15 years later. Just this very high-octane, exaggerated SpongeBob adventure with so many things to look at and so much effort going into making it as big and exciting as possible. And you can argue that the current episodes are a bit too busy, but this one has the perfect balance of, wordplay, observational comedy, and just this sort of Looney Tunes-ish madness. Like a joke like that with the tarps. It's cute and doesn't add much to the story, but it's there if you need something. I don't even think these tarps come back in the rest of the episode. And I just gotta say, I really love the way they made Mr. Krabs' house such a cramped, claustrophobic, and busy place to work, because there are just so many little knickknacks and details on all the walls. One thing that I'm kind of fascinated by is that he's got a portrait of the fisherman from Sandy, SpongeBob and the Worm, the one with the hook for a fin. And yeah, their relationship isn't something to explore. Maybe we'll get that episode eventually, but sometimes he's a darker shade of green, sometimes he's a very light green. You can tell they had to redraw these backgrounds again and again and again, and I just appreciate the effort going into making it such a dark and mysterious little, living room in the first half of the episode, but when the paint splatters all over, it just becomes a lot brighter, but also a little more, clock is ticking, we gotta, get this one last snafu sorted with. It's also just a really good episode to get a read on Mr. Krabs' personality without even really having Mr. Krabs in a majority of it, because he only appears at the beginning and the end and for a small cutaway, but you still know exactly the kind of character Mr. Krabs is. He's a bit old, he's a bit nautical, And he's also very stingy about his lifestyle. And just the backgrounds show that perfectly. I don't think I give the background artists enough credit because it takes a lot of effort to make a really good one. You have to be very good at watercolor. You have to be very good at, maintaining the SpongeBob style while giving it a bit more detail. It's pretty hard, and, in cases like this, they really do add to the experience and the charm of the show. And this episode is just meme central. It's got We Have Technology. It's got a lot of great little bits here and there, like even the smallest jokes, like Mr. Krabs at the fireplace, that cutaway. There's just a lot of fun little bits here and there. And SpongeBob is super expressive in this episode. Like, there are times where his shape is a bit more angular and his eyes are a little bit more ovular. And I feel like moments like that had a big influence on how he was drawn in the movie in season 4 and 5. Like, a shot like that, where they're really experimenting with his shape and his expressions. Plus, people really like this shot coming up where he is just absolutely shocked at the mess he's made. It's just great stuff like that that makes this episode so memorable and so rewatchable, because every 5 seconds you're getting another classic joke. And this is just an excellent episode for Patrick too. I can understand if you're a bit bothered by how much problems he puts SpongeBob through. Like, he's the one who made the bubble worse. He's the one who wasn't making it any easier for SpongeBob to open the paint can. And he's the one who, put the note in the vending machine that Mr. Krabs has in his house for some reason. Seriously, it's a very cramped house. I think Mr. Krabs needs some help. But I think that it's balanced out by Patrick mostly being a helpful presence, Like, he's not just a misery, giver. He adds to the plot. He gives SpongeBob the idea to, use an ordinary banknote in the first place, and that is brilliant. Like, they're comic foils to each other, but also best friends, and they get a lot of mileage out of that, and it's amazing. What I find pretty interesting about this episode and why they chose to pair it with Krusty Krab training video is that not only are they excellent Mr. Krabs episodes where he isn't the main focus, and you still get a very good read on his personality and how he affects SpongeBob's life and, the things he does, but they also both have him humming Blow the Man Down, which was very oddly coincidental. I don't know if they realized this, but I don't know, it works in tying these two episodes together in a very subtle way. Plus, Blow the Man Down was a heavy influence on the SpongeBob theme song in the first place, especially the beginning. And of course, like a lot of the most enjoyable Season 3 episodes, there's a lot of tension brewing. Like, they establish a problem and then just make it as chaotic as possible, and it's just really fun to see play out. As a matter of fact, I had in my notes movie-like tension, because you can definitely see them, making the situations more tense and much harder for SpongeBob and Patrick, which any good Season 3 should do, just raise the stakes a bit and have it so, it's more satisfying when they get out of these situations. But then they made the movie right after this, and you can definitely see how they, took this, tension of SpongeBob and Patrick in what they think is life-threatening danger, getting their keises cut off, and then putting it in a, actually making them have to face deathly challenges in the movie. And I just realized I've got the movie coming up, and that is going to be a very difficult movie to commentate over. But who knows? And there we've got a nice little Piet Mondrian-esque painting. I feel like that could be a meme, just have more paintings from Mr. Krabs to throw in, like various famous paintings or, memes that SpongeBob and Patrick randomly did throw in. And this is probably my favorite joke of the episode, just the face that Patrick drew on the dollar bill. Like, it comes at the most inopportune time when SpongeBob and Patrick are really fearing for their keisters. And, Patrick's still trying to make the situation better. That's hilarious. So, yeah, this is an incredible episode. I love it. Like, it's just a very traditional comedy routine. Like, especially in the old days of theatrical comedy, you had this duo or trio, doing something simple like baking a pie or at a construction site or painting, and it goes awry in all the worst ways. And I think that this episode did a great job of bringing it into the 21st century. Just having this comedy routine blow completely out of cartoonish proportion. And it's great that it blows up in Mr. Krabs' face anyways. Those shots of his mouth are very ugly, but they serve a good purpose. This is a wonderful ending to a wonderful episode, and I hope no one takes this last shot out of context. Krusty Krab training video, the 100th segment of SpongeBob, and what a 100th segment. Aaron Springer, C.H. Greenblatt, and Kate Osborne are to blame for this, and you're in for something special, not just from the different title card template, but also from the Eye of the Tiger-esque thing at the start. And then you've just got all these weird graphics popping up, and they're trying really hard to emulate a certain, genre of video, the training video, that any employee of any age in any field, more or less, will have to watch and sort of groan or, get invested in the corny jokes. And they got an actor called Steve Kahila, I think it's pronounced, to do this, like be the narrator. And I don't know what he's been in. I don't know if they brought him back for more SpongeBob projects, but he fits the show like a glove. This is absolutely his most famous role, and it deserves to be, because this episode is oddly very influential on internet humor, especially in the 2010s, because, whenever you see like a parody instructional video or training video or house tour that's parodic on YouTube in the 2010s and 20s, chances are it's gonna have been influenced by this episode in some way. Like being very tongue-in-cheek about it and being, propping up the most awkward parts of, a training video. And just the weird jokes like the Hoopla kid. I hope he's doing okay. I hope the brick didn't give him any sort of brain damage. But yeah, this is an accurate portrayal of training videos and what they're like. But it's also a parody of SpongeBob in a way. Like, it's putting all these characters in a genre-bending episode and just seeing what happens to them. Everyone is here. SpongeBob, Patrick, Plankton, Mr. Krabs, Squidward. Squidward probably has the least to do all around, and Sandy doesn't show up at all. Like, the secondary characters, not really, but most of the characters most relevant to the Krusty Krab and Patrick have a part to play in this story, and I think that's good. Breaking, the Krusty Krab episodes down to their most essential elements, what we know about the Krusty Krab, and just making it as weird and goofy as possible, and basically trying to reintroduce the, feel of SpongeBob. And they made SpongeBob super quirky here, and I love it. Like, he's absolutely invested in this idea of a training video. Squidward absolutely isn't. Mr. Krabs is just doing his thing, trying to sell things and not being a good boss. And it's just a great character-focused episode disguised as this big parody. And yeah, each of the segments is absolutely amazing in its own right, and it's wonderful that it all comes together into this masterclass of SpongeBob. Like, this is an absolute fan favorite episode because nothing else is like it. Like, they did a few more instructional or educational-esque videos later, like with Boat Smarts, but this episode still feels like its own thing. And they made a joke about poop and made it, like, intricate and layered. That takes talent. People order our patties is such a serendipitous coincidence that it spells out poop. Thank goodness it doesn't say fish order our patties, because we all know that what that says, and you know. And yet it still maintains a cheesy attitude about everything. Like, it doesn't try to be ironic, like, ha, poop. Like, it's really just giving into the madness and being, a very silly romp. It's got a bit of self-awareness to how silly and kooky it is. Like, most training videos like this have a very minute sense of self-awareness, and this episode captures that very well. And also, this episode has definitely helped a lot of people, because this shot of SpongeBob, practicing personal hygiene, washing his hands, this was actually shown on its own on Nick at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, like when it was very crucial to instruct people to wash their hands because that was the easiest way to make sure you're less susceptible to COVID. And I'm sure it helped a lot of kids understand, the impact of washing your hands and how it can affect your health in a small way, in a funny way, but it definitely could have helped some kids out and made them feel a bit safer, and that's good. This episode has a very positive legacy on not just comedy, but on health in a very small way. I always felt these jokes were pretty mean as a kid, like just swatting SpongeBob like a fly and his clones. But, SpongeBob and the narrator have a very interesting relationship. SpongeBob turned into his model sheet, but he's an eager McBeaver, as the narrator puts it, and the narrator is kind of like gradually getting a little more, savvy to SpongeBob's attitude and playing around with it, playing around with him and what he wants to accomplish by the end of the training video. That's the thing with this episode, is that although it's a bunch of segments with little, correlation to one another, there is still an arc. There is still the idea of SpongeBob wanting to make a Krabby Patty and get the secret formula by the end of the episode. And I think that was important, giving the episode a through line, and I love that painting of the electric chair interfacing with your boss. How clever. Here we've got the Patrick part of the episode, and it's probably the one that has the least to do with anything, because it doesn't have to do with SpongeBob, it doesn't have to do with being a good employee, for the most part. But it is funny because they put Patrick in this very mundane situation with Squidward, and they're just, doing a very mundane, frustrating part of being a cashier at a fast food joint. The very, indecisive customer, and just making him a complete dolt, and, it works. Patrick has no idea, what to do, and I also love this little live-action cutaway of Mr. Krabs and the speech bubble. That's actually kind of a meme as well. This episode is meme central too, because every other line is not just a great bit, but has also stuck with people. This is a very memorable episode, probably one of the most iconic episodes of the entire show, even if very few of little episodes have this same sort of attitude towards the setting. And they also snuck in a Plankton capture the flag, steal the formula thing. And it's great. Like, it's not the focus of the episode, but I just love how this little wrinkle comes in and Plankton throws it into maximum overdrive. But still, this is apparently going on at the same time as Patrick and Squidward at the front. And I just find that to be amazing that everything is going on. It's like Pulp Fiction in a way that, you know, everyone is living their own life, doing their own thing. And maybe that's just, you could argue that's a pacing problem, but I just love how they throw in this thing that is usually the basis of entire episodes and just put it in the middle of a scene of Patrick and Squidward just hanging out, trying to get an order done. And of course, SpongeBob's reaction to Plankton's schemes is very, you know, inconsistent. Sometimes he knows how to handle it. Sometimes he just, you know, floats around, kicking over tables. And I think that the reason this episode has stuck with so many people isn't the jokes. It isn't, you know, the amazing APM music that they play throughout the whole thing. It isn't the fact that it's a format bender. I think it's the ending. Like, it frustrated so many kids, and, you know, as an adult, you can understand why they're never going to reveal the Krabby Patty secret formula, because why do it now, 20 years in, when, you know, so much has changed about the show. But this frustrating build-up where when you first watch it, you swear the patty just stops at a certain point, but then, you know, speeds back through it. It's such a tease. It's such a tease of an episode if you really want to know what the secret formula is. But nowadays, we accept that it's more of an idea than a physical recipe for the patty beef or whatever. But they build it up. They make it such an important focus of the climax of the story. And then they just leave it in the dark. That is incredible. I love this episode. It was number 4 on the season 3 list, but it is absolutely fun to go back to and watch all the time. It's kind of a treat of an episode because, you know, you have to really savor your time with it, but it is a very fun episode, one of the very best of the whole show, and I would not have it any other way. I also love how the credits are completely different just to make it sing that much more. But anyway, that was Wet Painters and Krusty Krab training video. My question of the week last week was, which SpongeBob character would you like to be your mother or father or caregiver? And I got a lot of interesting answers. Sweet Dude says SpongeBob's parents would be a cheap answer, but he went with Larry the Lobster. Good on you. Bryce Fawn 2001, SpongeBob himself. That's a good idea. Dashell Rose says Sandy. That's good, she's an aunt. And Jack McGinn says, honestly, I'm not sure any of them would be the best parents. Fair enough. And Super Seal says Mr. Krabs. Brilliant. So that was probably the best 2-episode pairing in SpongeBob ever. So my question of the week for you, or question time, is going to be a little different. What is your favorite Nicktoon besides SpongeBob? You know, you can say anything. Avatar, Jimmy Neutron, Roku's Modern Life. Those are the 3 that come up to me. And Hey Arnold, those are the 4 that come up to me. But yours might be completely different, because if you grew up on SpongeBob, you pretty much grew up on nearly any generation of Nicktoons, so that'd be fun to see. And next week, we're going to try to find positive things to say about Party Pooper Pants. Goodbye for now.